Have you ever been surrounded by people, family, friends, coworkers, and still felt completely alone? You talk, you explain yourself, you try to tell people what you're feeling, yet somehow, it feels like nobody really gets it. Maybe you've had moments where someone says, "I understand," but deep down, you know they don't, and after a while, you stop trying. You keep your thoughts to yourself. You smile when you're hurting. You tell people you're fine because explaining feels exhausting. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. And what might surprise you is that the reason you don't feel understood isn't always because other people aren't listening. Sometimes, the real reason is hidden much deeper inside the way the human mind works. Today, we're going to uncover the hidden psychology behind why so many people feel misunderstood, even when they're surrounded by people who genuinely care about them. And by the end of this video, you may discover something about yourself that changes the way you see your relationships forever. Because most people have been looking in the wrong place for the answer. Let's begin. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every day. Nobody can see it. Nobody knows how much it weighs. Nobody knows what's inside. Now imagine trying to explain that weight to someone who has never carried your backpack. That's what emotional experience is like. Every person is living inside a private psychological world. You have your memories, your disappointments, your fears, your victories, your regrets. The experiences that shaped you over decades. The problem is that nobody else has lived your exact life. Psychologists have found that human beings consistently overestimate how clearly other people understand their thoughts and feelings. We assume our inner experience is more visible than it actually is. But it isn't. The truth is that much of what makes you who you are exists entirely inside your mind. And that's where the feeling of being misunderstood often begins. But here's where it gets interesting. Many people believe feeling understood depends on finding the right person, the perfect listener, the perfect partner, the perfect friend. Yet even people in long, loving marriages sometimes feel deeply misunderstood. Why? Because understanding is not the same thing as agreement. And it isn't mind reading. Most people secretly want others to feel exactly what they feel. But that's impossible. Someone can understand your pain without experiencing it the way you do. Someone can care deeply about you while still failing to fully grasp your emotional reality. The surprising part is that expecting complete understanding often creates even more loneliness. Because no human being can perfectly enter another person's inner world, almost nobody talks about this. The people who feel most misunderstood are often the people who have the richest emotional lives. They think deeply, they notice details, they reflect on experiences, they carry emotions that others may never see. As a result, they often feel like they're speaking a language nobody else understands. Maybe you've experienced this. You explain why something hurt you. The other person shrugs it off. You share a concern. They tell you not to worry. You reveal something personal. They quickly change the subject. In those moments, it can feel like rejection. But research suggests something important. Most people are not intentionally dismissive. They're simply viewing the situation through their own experiences. They're responding to their reality, not yours. And that difference matters. Because what feels invalidating to you may simply be limited perspective on their part. This changes everything. Another hidden reason people don't feel understood is something psychologists call emotional filtering. Here's how it works. When you've felt misunderstood repeatedly throughout life, your brain begins expecting it. And once the brain expects something, it starts looking for evidence that confirms the expectation. Imagine telling a story to a friend. They listen carefully for 10 minutes, then they misunderstand one detail. What sticks in your memory? Usually the misunderstanding, not the 10 minutes of listening. Your brain naturally pays more attention to emotional disappointments than emotional successes. This tendency helped humans survive. But in modern relationships, it can create unnecessary suffering. Most people never realize how much their expectations shape their experiences. If you expect nobody will understand you, even genuine efforts from others can feel inadequate. And over time, this creates a painful cycle. You feel misunderstood, you share less. People know less about you, which makes them understand you even less. Then the loneliness grows. But that's not the end of the story. There's another psychological factor that few people recognize. As we get older, our life experiences become increasingly unique. Think about it. By age 50, 60, or 70, you've lived through decades of events that shaped you in ways younger people may never fully grasp. You've experienced losses, changes, disappointments, successes, relationships. moments that left permanent marks on your heart. The longer you live, the more personalized your emotional world becomes, and sometimes that creates a feeling of separation from others. You start thinking, nobody understands what I've been through. And in some ways, that's true, nobody has lived your exact story. But here's the important distinction. They don't need to have lived your story to connect with your emotions. Psychologists have discovered something unexpected. Human connection is often built less through shared experiences and more through shared emotions. Someone may never have experienced your exact situation, but they may understand grief, fear, hope, disappointment, regret, love. The emotional core can still create connection. And that's where many people accidentally make a mistake. Instead of sharing emotions, they focus only on facts. They explain what happened, but they never explain how it felt. And facts alone rarely create understanding. Feelings do. Here's another sign that may sound familiar. You often think, nobody asks how I'm really doing. At first glance, that sounds like a problem with other people. But psychologists have noticed something fascinating. Many individuals who feel unseen have become experts at hiding their struggles. They've spent years being strong, reliable, independent, self-sufficient. People assume they're okay because that's the image they've consistently shown. The irony is painful. The more capable you appear, the less support people may think you need. And, eventually, you begin feeling invisible. Not because people don't care, but because they don't see what's happening beneath the surface. The surprising part is that vulnerability often creates more understanding than explanation. A simple statement like, "I've been struggling lately," can sometimes create more connection than a 30-minute story, because vulnerability gives people access to your emotional world. And that's what understanding requires. So what can you do if you've spent years feeling misunderstood? First, stop expecting perfect understanding. No person can fully experience your inner world. And that's okay. The goal isn't perfect understanding, it's meaningful connection. Second, express feelings, not just events. Instead of only describing what happened, describe what it felt like. People connect to emotions much more easily than details. Third, give others permission to misunderstand occasionally. Misunderstanding is not always rejection. Sometimes it's simply part of being human. Fourth, pay attention to people who are making genuine efforts. Many people focus exclusively on what's missing, but meaningful relationships often grow from imperfect attempts at connection. And finally, consider whether you've been hiding parts of yourself for too long. The walls that protect us from disappointment can also block us from understanding. Sometimes the very thing we want most requires the risk we've been avoiding. Here's the truth. The desire to be understood is one of the most human desires we have. It doesn't make you needy. It doesn't make you weak. It means you're human. Every person wants to feel seen. Every person wants to feel known. Every person wants to feel that their experiences matter. If you've been carrying the feeling that nobody understands you, remember this. Your experiences are real. Your emotions are real. And your longing for connection is real. You may never find someone who understands every part of your story, but you can find people who care enough to listen, people who are willing to learn, people who may not walk in your shoes, but who choose to walk beside you. And sometimes, that's more powerful than perfect understanding, because connection isn't built on complete knowledge. It's built on presence, it's built on empathy, and it's built on the willingness to keep reaching toward one another, even when words fall short. And if today's video resonated with you, you'll definitely want to watch our next episode, because we're going to explore a surprising psychological reason why some people feel lonely even when they're constantly surrounded by others. The answer may completely change the way you think about loneliness, and you won't want to miss it.